Hi there, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I thought I would cover, one of my more recent articles, but it's a subject that I've covered multiple times before, always trying to present different approaches and giving you guys the opportunity to choose the one that you want to use. So I wanted to revisit, probably for the last time in reality, but how we can work with EXIF metadata information relevant to files. Now, typically when we talk about EXIF information, we're talking about images. And what it is behind or embedded in the image file itself is this EXIF metadata. And this can be comprised of a whole bunch of information relative to the image. Your color palette. It could be, what took which camera, what device took the picture. It'll give information possibly about GPS coordinates. It can give shutter, aperture, all sorts of information relative to that file. What I've also learned over time, because that was my initial knowledge of EXIF information, is actually it goes beyond just image files. So you will find embedded metadata information, we'll quote unquote call it EXIF metadata information, in all sorts of files, from zip files, TIFFs, which is images obviously, PDFs, zip files. So it isn't just limited to images, but that is most commonly what we think of when we're talking about EXIF information. So in this video, I wanted to talk about a tool that I kept seeing mentioned time and time again with regards to wanting to work with EXIF data while I was working on other approaches. So in my article that I published, you'll see here that I have presented previously a whole slew of different ways of working with this type of information. Now, this is not a complete list of all my articles. It was just to show you a little bit here that we have WIA that offers us the opportunity to work with it. We have things like free image. We could do PowerShell, GDI Plus, or just plain reading it through VBA. This tool is probably what a lot of people would say is the pinnacle of working with it, in the sense that it's a standalone EXE that we download and we're able to use it. We don't need to install it on the computer, so it's a portable app that we can just call to read and write EXIF data as we please. And it's really well done because it didn't take much work to manage to get this functional in VBA. So that is another beautiful thing here, is it works throughout VBA. So Excel, Access, Word, Outlook, it doesn't make a difference. We can just drop this code into place and we're operational in a matter of a couple of seconds. So the best thing we can do is just dive in. Let me give you a little, rundown of these functions, how they work, and you can take it from there. So the first thing I do here is I'm just going to present to you the EXIF tool. Now, I did not create this in any means, and I provide a link right here that you can click on it and go and download the appropriate version for your setup. So you have the 32-bit, you have the 64-bit. And what I did, let me just show you my folder for a second here. I downloaded that file, I unzipped it, and I created here, this is where I unzipped it. I just called it ExifTool. And then I took this file here, which is the native file, and according to the instructions, I'm just following the instructions on the website. In my case, I didn't rename it. I copied it, and then I renamed it to exiftool.exe. So that's all there is to do with regards to getting the EXIF tool and having it ready for operation. So download it, unzip it, and then rename the file. 3 operations and you're good to go. Once that's done, then I created this database that we're going to look at. You can also check out his website. There's lots of information. You can come and check tag names, examples of outputs, things like that. But you're going to see, for our purpose, especially with VBA, you're best to just come to my article. And we start off as usual. I'm trying to make this as flexible as possible. To that end, I'm going to try to use reusable functions and procedures and not embed things into each individual EXIF tool call. That way, if I need to change something, it's in one location instead of multiple locations. So for that to happen, and to be able to also avoid useless reading and writing to the hard drive, I'm trying to do this all in memory. We need a couple helper functions or procedures. Very simple. The first one here comes from my website once again, and all it is it's going to retrieve information from the clipboard. So what happens, you're going to see in a moment, but in all my code, when we run the ExifTool, I'm pushing whatever it's going to output as a result to the clipboard. I'm not saving it to a file. I don't want to write to the hard drive uselessly over and over and over. I push it into memory, into the clipboard. So we need this getText function to go read the clipboard and retrieve what the ExifTool exe just gave us as a result. So that's the first guy that we need as a helper function. The second one is we're going to be executing shell commands, okay? Because it's an ExifTool. It's basically a DOS command style thing we're going to be doing. So for that, we need a simple function that allows us to run shell commands, and that's what this guy here will allow us to do. I'm using the WScript shell, and then I'm going to issue it the command that I want it to run. In this case, I set it a little bit differently. I added a debug mode while in development. It allows me to, for instance, output what command just was asked to be run, and it will keep the window open. Sometimes I can see errors and things like that. You can also check out this page for much more detailed information and detailed code samples for this. This is truly a simplified version I use just for this purpose. But here you'll find much more hardened code, shall we say, and different approaches you can use. And once again, I leave the choice up to you. As you can see here, early binding, late binding, we get into debug mode, etc., etc., etc. But for our purposes today of the discussion, this is what I'm using, and it does work just fine. Then the last thing, and it's part of the ExifTool, yes and no, is we have to call that exe, and we have to pass it arguments and values. And I didn't want to hard code the path to that ExifTool.exe into each individual function that I'm going to create. Because that means if I do that, if I put, in each function, the C2 points / and the blah, 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 ExifTool.exe, it means if ever I move that file, I now have to update 10, 12, 20 different procedures. And that's just not a smart way of working. So the smart way of working is I created a very simple function here that specifies and is going to create a variable that I can use to get the path. So now with this, I can just call this and I get my path. But now I only have one location I need to update throughout the rest of my code. So it's just, once again, just a question of working smarter, not harder. And then we get into each individual function or subroutine that is going to read or write or remove metadata. And then here I get into some examples, and I have the demo database here for you guys to download and play with. And then a final word that we'll look at in a moment. So let's look at this, but in the VBA window, it's a little bit easier. So as I said, we're going to start off. We're going to have here, let me bring this into view for you. We're going to have that clipboard function that I said we need. It's just a simple utility. We're going to have the function for running the commands, like I said. The file dialog is for a demo form. I will show you in just a moment. Don't worry about that right now. And the testing, obviously, we'll look at that later. But let's just dive into the ExifTool code itself. Now, the ExifTool, like I said here, so we're going to have this function. Let's just look at it in the immediate function. And if we look in the immediate window, you see it just spits out the path to the exe. So if we bring this back up, it brings me to this path with the exe it goes into the subfolder, should I say, right? And it goes get ExifTool exe. So that's what it's going to get. So every time this is called, that's what it's going to return. So now in every single function, the first thing I do to start my command string is I'm calling that function. So I'm populating my command string to begin with the path to the exe that we need to run to make this all work. So every single time, every function, every procedure, subroutine, that's the first thing we're always going to do. But by doing it this way, like I said, we can just change one line of code and update all of the functions. So let's look at a concrete example. Let's go to, I guess, probably one of the more common things we need to do, which is let's just look, what is the EXIF data of a file, any file? Well, we can come here and here's the example. I will run it in 1 second, but let's look at the code. What am I doing? So I'm coming here. The first thing I do, like I always said, is we're going to go get this, whatever it is, path to the exe. Then I have a couple options in my call here. So I have an option if I want to see duplicate tags or not, because sometimes you'll see the same tag name with different values or the same value in an EXIF metadata. So do you want to see the duplicates or not? And then do you want to see the abridged or the original tag names? I know some of this doesn't quite 100% make sense. We will look at a concrete example and it will be as clear as can be. You can also look at the help file documentation to get more information on any of these command arguments. But as you can see here, depending on if they've been set to true, then I append a -a, I append a -S, and then I come down and we do the default things to just get the metadata. And if you look at the documentations, I'm applying a fast, I'm applying a sort. You don't have to, but I just find it easier for me at least. If I sort it alphabetically, then it makes it much easier to find certain tags that I may be looking for. Then I pass it the file. So that's the first argument. So right here, we're passing it a file that we want the metadata of. And lastly, I append at the very end of that, the pipe clip. And the pipe clip is exactly what I was explaining before, is it's going to push the results of this ExifTool.exe to the clipboard instead of writing it to a file or just displaying it on the window itself of the W script shell. So this pushes it to memory. So then once it runs and I do an event, I can retrieve it from the clipboard and get the value from that clipboard. So let's just look at the default running. So if I just run this on, as you can see here, a WEBP, so a WebP file. So as you can see, it handles even more modern files. If you just run it, give it a second, you'll see there is all the metadata that is stored in that one file. Okay. Now look at these tag names. Now let's switch and put this to true. Now look at the tag names. Okay, so these ones are more like, I'd say, plain English, shall we say, versus here, those spaces are gone amongst other things. There can be changes also even in the naming slightly for certain tags, but that's the big difference. So if you're going to present it to the user in general, you want that as false or just leave it as default, right? Because it just makes it much more legible. But the choice is yours. And duplicate tags, I don't think I have any in this example or not. But let's take a look. Let's apply here, show duplicate tags. Let's say true. Let's see what happens. No, I'm not seeing any for this. It does happen, but I have had it in the past with certain files. But it's more of an exception. But the option is still there. Now this works great. As you can see, you get out everything in one shot. Then you've got to use VBA in some shape or form to extract, break down that information, and then display it however you want. Text box, list box, you know, the choice is yours. But that's how easy it is. As you can see, it's a single line that you just call and you've got your values. What if I just wanted a single tag? Well, a single tag can be done in a very similar manner, right? So we're going to come here, we're going to get the path to exe, we're going to put a fast. Here I'm doing SSS, and you look at my comment, I'm only getting the value. So I'm not going to get the tag names with the colon and things like that. I'm only going to return the value for the tag I've asked for. Because we don't need anything else. We know the tag we just asked for. We don't need to repeat it. And then we'd have to parse that out of the value. So we're lucky we have this option if we do SSS that we get just the value. Here then we do a dash and the tag name we want. And then the file, and we push it to the clipboard, same as before. We run it, do events, and we retrieve the value from the clipboard. We run this, and there you go. There's the value. So now you have the choice. You can get all the tags, or you can go get just one tag. Well, sometimes we may not be 100% sure of what we're looking for, or we may want multiple bits of information that are all grouped or named similarly. Well, we can use a wildcard search in such an instance. And you'll see here the same basic concept. And in this case, we can't use the dash 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 because there could be more than one return a tag in this case. It's more similar to getting all the tags. So we're going to go back to the dash A, the dash S, all of this stuff, the fast, the sort. Except at the tag name, now we're going to add the star and the star. And you could also, there are variations on the syntax. This is the most flexible version. So an example of that would be this guy here, where what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look at this file and pull me out any tag that has the word file in it. If you do that, now you're going to see we're going to get the access date time, creation, modification, the name, permissions, the size. So as you can see, instead of having to go and use the specific one and go get them one by one by one by one, we can use a wildcard to go get, these 6 or 8 different tags in one shot. You could also, yes, no issue there. You could use this one, go retrieve all of them, and just parse out just the ones you're after. But just know you can do wildcard searches, whatever you'd like. If we come here, and you could do, I don't know, something with the word path in it. I don't know if there is anything. No. What about ISO? There you go. But as you can see, you can get one item because there's only one actual matching tag, or in the case of, like you saw, name. There you go. You got document name, file name. But as you can see, document name has no value currently. So you've got 3 different approaches to working, well, at least reading the current tags. What about wanting to sanitize a file? Sometimes, especially before going and distributing images online and things like that, we want to delete the meta tag information. And it may be to delete one specific tag, or it may be to remove them all. A lot of times people want to remove, let's say, GPS coordinates and things like that. Well, I've created here 2 functions for that purpose. The first one removes all the meta tags that it can. The other one only removes the specific meta tag you chose. So how can we do this? Well, as you can see here, once again, the ExifTool was created with all of these different scenarios in mind. You can use the ExifTool and then do this dash all equal and not give a value. So basically you're saying, go take all the metadata and just wipe it. And very important that you add this dash override original. So it's going to override and keep that original file name. So basically replace that file with a new sanitized version of the file. Now, remember, you're doing this, you're replacing that file. So you make sure you know what you're doing before you run a command like this, or it's all stripped and there's no way of recovery. But if we just take it for a moment, let's come get the EXIF data for, let's go get this file here. Okay. And as you can see, it's got a lot of metadata. So now, let's come here and tell it, remove all the metadata. Actually, let's just do this. Give it a second to process. And now, if we take this guy again and run it, let's see what happens. It has removed everything it's able to remove. There are still certain minimal ExifTool, EXIF metadata that has to remain in a file. There's no way of removing the directory in which it's currently placed. There's no way of removing a file name and things like that, file permissions, the file size. But it removed everything else that it's allowed to. Aperture, ISO, GPS, everything else would be wiped. And just to give you an example, in this specific case, the original file was 6.7 megabytes. And by removing the metadata, it got reduced to 2.4 megabytes. So this alone sometimes can impact file size, and it can be quite significant. Similarly, let's run this again. So what I've done is I put back in the original file. And you'll see here, you see all those original tags are back now, okay? But you can see now just how much had been deleted. So let's just take one. Doesn't make a difference. Let's say here, flash. Let's change, instead of removing all the tags, let's look at removing just a specific tag. So now, instead of doing the dash all equals nothing, we're going to do a dash in just the tag we want removed or wiped. We're going to do equals nothing. So what we're going to do, and let's just wipe all of this out again. Let's just bring this back up for ease of reading. So what we'll do is we'll remove a specific metadata tag. We're going to have our file and then the tag name. And we're going to take that file that we've been playing with, and we're going to say go. So it now it took the file, it removed the flash, and then we can reread the metadata. And because I sorted this, we can just roll up to F, and you'll see flash is gone. Okay, so like I say, now you have a choice of wiping all of the tags in one shot or just one specific tag. The choice is yours. Okay, let's now, the last piece of this puzzle would be to modify a tag. What happens if we want to change the value, create a meta tag data? Well, once again, the ExifTool is set up for this, and it offers us the ability to do that. So let's say we want to update a meta tag. Well, it's very simple. And as you can see here, we're going to simply specify the dash tag name that we want to update, and then we're going to pass it the new value we want to apply. So let's just look at the case of the image that I'm always using for these demos. And I'm going to extract right now. Let's just look, what is the current value of the meta tag make? So the type of device that was used to take the image. And you'll see currently it's specified as Canon. But we can update a specific one by doing this command. And then we're going to pass it the file. We're going to pass it the tag we want to update. And we're going to pass it the new value. Oops. So we'll do Microsoft Access. Let it do its thing. And now we can come back here and we can read the tag back to make sure that it was properly updated. And if we really wanted to, we could come back here. We could run this guy. Oops. Oops, yes, wrong arguments. There we go. And if we come back up to make, just to prove the case in point, it is indeed there and it has been properly updated in the file. So that's a high-level overview of how this works, these functions. They're really not very complicated. They amount to being a single line of a command that you execute to the shell script. Now, I said I wanted to just demonstrate the testing module and demonstrate very briefly a form. So basically, what can we do with some of these functions if we wanted to? Well, the hardest ones to use in a general sense are going to be the one that gets multiple bits of information. So the get all or the get wildcard, both of these are going to return a massive string. And then I know a lot of users have issues. How do I break that down? So in the testing one, what I did here is what I'm doing is I'm going to get all the metadata for this image. We've seen this, you know what it will output. And then I'm going to break it down line by line, and then I'm going to build a dictionary array out of it. And then I'm going to use a dictionary array. Why? Because I can retrieve specific elements very easily. So what I've done is I'm going to read back, let's say, I'm not quite sure, but let's say 30 meta tags. And then here I'm just going to output, for the sake of this discussion, these specific 4. So let's just run it just to show you what happens. So it's going to go get all the information, but I'm just going to request that it give me back the file name, the image size, the file type, and the color space. It could have been anything. Okay. So if we wanted to come here and we can add, oops, the make. And it'd be good if I spelt it properly. If we clear this and we rerun it, you'll see now that the make is there. If I had relabeled it, it would have been nice. So there you go. We rerun it just to prove it, and now make has been properly labeled. Okay. Oops. The other thing is, let's be serious when we're talking about access. You want a user form, you want to make a nice graphical interface, and that's what I've done here. This is a very simple demo, but what I've done here is I've set up a simple file dialog. That's why we have the file dialog module, which allows us to go pick any file we want. So let's just go get that file. Now I know it's in my C, in my temp. I go down to image. It doesn't make it an image 01. And it's going to go read all the metadata, and then it's going to populate this list box. So now you've got a visually appealing interface where the users can go through this very easily. Now, if we wanted, we could add buttons here. We could add commands to, wipe all the metadata. We could have here delete the selected one. You could have a button that says update it, where you have a little pop-up form where the user would put the new value. The sky's the limit here. But just to show you just what all is possible, what is stored behind an image, it's amazing. There's that make that we updated 2 seconds ago. How much information is embedded in files that people don't realize. And when I say that, I'm not just saying that. If we take a PDF, for instance, you get all sorts of information. If we go and take a, I don't know if I have any here, a zip file. As you can see, there's a lot of information even behind a zip file. So you can do this on any file of your choosing. It's amazing the information that sometimes is stored. Not all files have a lot of information, but some do. And you're able to go and read the information and see, embedded information behind, and update it, delete it, remove it, whatever you're wanting. Obviously, this tool is primarily for images. Let's not kid ourselves. But once again, it is amazing to see just how much information is behind even something like a Excel file. And I'm going to stop here. All the code is there for you to utilize and adapt as you see fit. And I hope this helps a few of you. Don't forget, though, as I said at the very onset of this discussion, there are many other approaches that can be used. So if you're not comfortable using an EXE like this is, downloading someone else's EXE and just running it, this is a very well-known tool. There's nothing to worry about. But if that is a worry, there are alternative solutions that you can employ. So look at some of my previous articles. And at the very end here, you'll see it's a nice tool. It works. It's free. It works effectively and quite fast. It's a VBA tool, not an access tool. And what I've demonstrated here really is just scratching the top of the ExifTool capabilities. So, go back here, look at the documentation. There's so much more you can do. For instance, if you had a folder with 300 images and you wanted to apply a tag to it, let's say the author, you can, in one command, update 300 images. You can delete from 300 images a tag if you wanted to wipe one specific tag or all the tags. So you can do massive batches, and that's one of the most powerful things with this tool, is it can do those types of operations instead of having to call it over and over and over. Now, I haven't explored that in my article today. It works. I've done it. Maybe something I will add to the article later. I really concentrated on the more common tasks. But yeah, and like I say here, you can explore other file types like I demonstrated very briefly in the forum. It's amazing what is hidden, embedded in files that most users aren't aware of. And I provide a couple of links here if you're looking for what some of the, how did I know, use a -a, do -s. Obviously, Google is your best friend, as is the documentation. But if you come here, I give a direct link on his documentation. Here is a breakdown of those arguments that are available to you. So you can just come here and you can build your own. It can output, if you don't want to output it to the clipboard like I'm doing, you can output it to a CVS. You can output it as an HTML file. So there's lots of different options that are available for all sorts of purposes depending what your needs are. Like I say, I concentrated on the more common tasks, but check this out. It is amazing how flexible and capable this tool is. And I'm stopping here. I know I said it before. I am stopping. Wishing you all a great day. As usual, if you don't mind, like, share, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.